The receipt fell from his hand like a leaf in autumn, drifting slowly to the marble floor. For a man who had ordered executions with a nod, signed death warrants with his signature, and watched empires crumble without blinking, Vincent Moretti stood completely paralyzed. Because the little girl staring up at him had his mother's eyes. And the woman holding her hand was the only person he'd ever loved. They called him the wolf in the underworld. Not because he was loud or vicious, but because he moved in silence and left nothing behind. Vincent Moretti had inherited his father's empire at 25. A network of smuggling operations, underground casinos, and carefully laundered businesses that stretched across 3 states. He didn't choose this life. It chose him the night his father was shot in their family kitchen. Blood pooling around the breakfast table where Vincent had eaten cereal as a child. "You're a Moretti," his dying father had whispered. "That means you don't run. You rule." So he ruled. With precision. With coldness. With a heart that learned to stop feeling because feeling meant weakness, and weakness meant death. His penthouse overlooked the city like a throne room overlooking a kingdom. Marble floors, imported whiskey, silence so complete you could hear your own pulse. But silence, he learned, was different from peace. At night, alone in that vast empty space, Vincent would stand by the floor-to-ceiling windows and look down at the lights below. Thousands of lives being lived, loved, lost, and feel nothing but a hollow ache where his humanity used to be. He had money. He had power. He had fear and respect from every corner of the criminal world. But he had no one to come home to. No one who said his name with softness. No reason to be anything other than what blood and violence had made him. Until he met Emma. It was 5 years ago, in the last place a man like him should have been. A small community art gallery fundraiser his lawyer dragged him to for appearances. "You need to look legitimate," his lawyer had said. "Show your face. Donate to something clean." Vincent had walked through that gallery like a ghost through a world he didn't belong in. Art on walls. Wine in plastic cups. People laughing about things that didn't matter. Then he saw her. Emma was standing in front of a painting. A simple landscape of a field at sunrise, and she was crying. Not sobbing. Just silent tears sliding down her cheeks as she stared at all that painted hope. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she'd said without looking at him, somehow sensing his presence. "I wouldn't know," Vincent had answered honestly. She'd turned then, and he saw her fully. Brown hair pulled back, paint stains on her fingers, eyes that held both sadness and light. "Then you're not really looking," she said gently. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Like he was human. Like he could be taught something. Like he wasn't a monster. He donated $50,000 that night. But what he really wanted was her name. They were impossible from the start. Emma was a substitute teacher and part-time muralist who believed in second chances and the goodness of people. Vincent was a criminal whose hands were stained with choices that couldn't be undone. But when he was with her, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. She never asked what he did. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't want to know. For 6 months, they existed in a bubble. A secret world where he wasn't the wolf and she wasn't naive. Where he could laugh. Where he could touch someone gently. Where he could fall asleep with his head in her lap and feel safe. "You're different when you smile," she told him once, tracing his jaw with her paint-stained fingers. "You look like who you were supposed to be." But supposed to be was a luxury men like Vincent couldn't afford. The end came the way he always knew it would. One of his rival's men had seen them together, taken photos, started asking questions in the wrong neighborhoods. Vincent's consigliere laid it out coldly. She's a target now. They'll use her to get to you. You need to end it or end them. Ending them meant war. War meant bodies. Bodies meant federal attention. Federal attention meant the entire operation collapsing. He could protect Emma by keeping her close, pulling her into his world, surrounding her with guards and guns and the constant shadow of violence. Or he could protect her by letting her go. So he made the choice he thought was noble. He walked into her small apartment on a Tuesday evening, and with a face carved from stone, he said the cruelest thing he'd ever said. This was fun, but it's over. He saw her face break, saw confusion, then hurt, then something harder. That's it, she whispered. 6 months and... That's it? That's it. Did I do something? You didn't do anything. I just don't feel the same anymore. Each word was a knife he turned on himself. You were a distraction. Now I'm bored. He walked out while she was still standing there, tears streaming down her face. He told himself it was mercy. He told himself she'd move on, find someone good, live a safe and beautiful life far away from his darkness. He told himself he'd saved her. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that she was 3 weeks pregnant. 5 years later, Vincent stood in the private dining area of the Grandis Hotel, waiting for a catering order for a meeting. He'd grown colder in those years, more efficient, more empty. He'd buried himself in the business, expanded operations, eliminated rivals, built an empire that ran like clockwork. People whispered his name with more fear than ever. But late at night, in that silent penthouse, he still sometimes thought of paint-stained fingers and the way someone once made him feel human. The hotel staff knew better than to make him wait. He stood by the counter, hands in the pockets of his tailored coat, face unreadable. Then the door opened, and his entire world stopped. Emma walked in wearing a bright red delivery uniform, hair tied back in a practical ponytail, carrying insulated food bags. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from working 2 jobs and not enough sleep, but her shoulders were still straight, still proud. She hadn't seen him yet. She was looking down at her phone, checking an address, and holding her other hand was a little girl, maybe 4 years old, with dark curly hair and a pink backpack. Vincent's heart, that organ he'd thought had calcified into stone, suddenly started hammering against his ribs. Emma looked up. Their eyes met. All the color drained from her face. The moment stretched like glass about to shatter. 5 years collapsed into 5 seconds. All the words unsaid, all the pain unhealed, all the love that never really died. "Mom," the little girl said, tugging Emma's hand. "Are you okay?" Emma blinked, and Vincent saw her pull herself together with visible effort. That same strength she'd always had, the kind that bent but never broke. "I'm fine, baby," she said softly. The little girl looked around the fancy hotel with wide, curious eyes. Then her gaze landed on Vincent. She stared at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Mom," she said slowly. "Who is he?" Emma bent down, voice carefully controlled. "Just a customer, sweetheart." But the little girl kept staring at Vincent, studying his face with the strange intuition children sometimes have. Then, so quietly it was almost a whisper, she said, "Dad." The word hit Vincent like a bullet to the chest. Time stopped. The receipt he'd been holding slipped from his fingers, floating down to the marble floor in slow motion. "Sophia, no." Emma started, but her voice cracked. Vincent couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His eyes went from the little girl to Emma, and he saw the truth written all over her face. The panic, the pain, the fierce protectiveness. The little girl, Sophia, his daughter, his child, tilted her head, confused by the sudden tension. "He looks like the picture," she said innocently. "The one in your drawer." Emma's eyes filled with tears, and Vincent understood. After he'd left, after he'd broken her heart with cruel words and calculated coldness, after he'd walked away thinking he was saving her, she'd been carrying his child. She'd gone through pregnancy alone, birth alone, 4 years of raising a daughter alone, working delivery jobs and struggling and surviving while he lived in a penthouse and convinced himself he'd done the right thing. All his power, all his control, all his empire, and he'd never known the most important thing in his life existed. "I need to go," Emma said abruptly, her voice shaking. She grabbed Sophia's hand. "I have other deliveries." "Wait." Vincent's voice came out hoarse, unfamiliar even to himself. "Emma, wait. Don't." She held up one hand, tears streaming down her face now. "Please don't." "Is she—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. His throat had closed up. "It doesn't matter," Emma said, but it was answer enough. "It matters," Vincent said, and the emotion in his voice was so raw that his own guards, waiting outside, would have been shocked. "Emma, please. Is she mine?" Emma looked at him with eyes full of old hurt and new fear. "You said I was a distraction," she whispered. "You said you were bored. You walked away like I was nothing. I lied. Why?" The word was a sob. "To protect you." "Well, congratulations." Her laugh was bitter. "I was really protected. Pregnant and alone and terrified. So protected I had to drop out of school and work 3 jobs just to afford diapers." Each word was a lash across his soul. "I didn't know," he said helplessly. "Emma, I swear I didn't know. Would it have mattered?" She was crying openly now. "Would you have come back? Or would you have sent money and stayed in your untouchable world?" He had no answer, because he didn't know. The man he'd been 5 years ago might have done exactly that. But the man standing here now, looking at a little girl with his mother's eyes and Emma's smile, felt something breaking open inside his chest. Something frozen finally cracking, finally bleeding, finally feeling. "I want to know her," he said quietly. "Please, I want to be part of her life." Emma shook her head, pulling Sophia closer. "You can't just walk back in." "I'm not walking in. I'm begging." Vincent Moretti, who never begged, who never bowed, dropped to one knee in that hotel lobby. "Please, Emma, please don't take this away from me. I've lost everything that matters. Don't let me lose her too." Sophia watched this strange man kneeling in his expensive coat, and her small voice broke the tension. "Why is he sad, Mommy?" Emma looked down at her daughter, their daughter, and something softened in her face. "Because—" she started, then stopped, took a breath, made a choice. "Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, baby, and sometimes it takes a long time to fix them." She looked back at Vincent, and her voice was steel wrapped in pain. "You want to know her? Then you show up. Not with money, not with gifts. You show up, consistently, safely, like a real father. Can you do that?" Vincent rose to his feet, and for the first time in 5 years he felt purpose beyond power. "Yes," he said. "I swear to you, yes." The next 3 months changed everything. Vincent showed up. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, he came to Emma's small apartment in a neighborhood he'd never set foot in. No guards, no guns, no armor. Just him. At first, Sophia was shy, peeking at him from behind her mother's legs. But children are resilient, and curiosity won out over caution. "Do you like coloring?" she asked one evening, holding out a crayon. Vincent, who hadn't held a crayon in 30 years, sat on the worn carpet of their living room and colored a very terrible dinosaur. Sophia giggled. "That's not how you do green." And something in Vincent's chest, something he thought was dead, stirred to life. He learned everything. That Sophia loved strawberries but hated grapes. That she had nightmares about monsters under the bed. That her favorite color was purple. That she wanted to be an astronaut and a princess because why choose? He learned that Emma was working 2 jobs, delivery driving and night shifts at a diner, just to cover rent and childcare. That she'd given up painting because she didn't have time or energy for dreams anymore. He learned that his daughter had been sick last winter, and Emma had chosen between paying for medicine and paying rent. She'd chosen medicine and been evicted, living in her car for 2 weeks until she found a cheaper place, while he'd been sitting in his penthouse, drinking imported whiskey. The guilt was crushing. "Let me help," he'd said one evening after Sophia fell asleep on the couch between them, her small hand wrapped around his finger. "I don't want your money," Emma said tiredly. "It's not for you. It's for her. She's mine too, Emma. Let me take care of what's mine." Emma looked at him with weary eyes. "You can't just buy your way into being a father." "I know, but I can make sure she never goes hungry again. That you don't have to choose between rent and medicine. That's not buying anything. That's responsibility." Emma was quiet for a long time, looking at their sleeping daughter. "Okay," she finally whispered, "but you still show up. Money doesn't replace presence." "I will," Vincent promised. "I am. But the universe doesn't let men like Vincent Moretti simply walk away from darkness." The word got out. Someone saw him, the feared wolf, sitting on a park bench with a little girl, pushing her on a swing, buying her ice cream. In his world, that kind of vulnerability was blood in the water. His consigliera came to him with hard eyes and harder news. "The Rossi family knows about the girl. About the woman." Vincent's blood turned to ice. "How much do they know?" "Enough. They're looking for leverage against you. The East Side territory dispute, they want you to back off. If you don't." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. "Increase security," Vincent said immediately. "Put a team on Emma's apartment. Unmarked cars. I don't want them scared, but I want them safe." "Vincent," his consigliera's voice was grim. "This is what you were trying to avoid 5 years ago. By bringing them into your life, you've painted a target on them." "I know. So what do you want to do?" Vincent looked out the window of his office, toward the part of the city where a little girl was probably eating dinner and chattering about her day. "I want to protect them, whatever it takes." "And if whatever it takes means walking away again?" Vincent closed his eyes. "Then I stay close enough to keep them safe and far enough that no one uses them to hurt me. But I don't disappear. Not again." Emma noticed the car parked across the street. "Vincent," she said when he came for Thursday dinner, her voice tight, "why are there men watching my building?" Sophia was in her room playing. Vincent sat down heavily at the small kitchen table. "Because I'm trying to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" But understanding was already dawning in her eyes, and with it, fear. "Oh God, This is because of you. Because of what you are. Yes. I knew it. She pressed her hands to her face. I knew getting close to you again was a mistake. Emma, you're putting her in danger. Her voice broke. She's 4 years old, Vincent. She should be worried about dolls and cartoons. Not this. I know. His voice was raw. And I'm handling it. I won't let anyone touch her. Or you. You can't promise that. Emma was crying now. Your world doesn't make promises, Vincent. It makes bodies. He flinched because she was right. Then what do you want me to do? He asked quietly. Walk away? Disappear? Because I will. If that's what keeps you both safe, I'll do it. Even if it kills me. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth. This wasn't the cold man who'd walked away 5 years ago. This was someone broken open, raw, desperate. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know what the right answer is. From the other room, Sophia's small voice called out, Daddy? Will you read me a story? Daddy. She'd started calling him that 3 weeks ago. Vincent's eyes closed, and a single tear slid down his cheek. I'll figure it out, he said to Emma. I promise you, I'll figure it out. The threat came 2 days later. A simple envelope left at Emma's workplace. Inside, a photo of Sophia at her preschool, playing on the swings. And a note. Back off East Side, or we'll take what you love. Vincent held that photo in his hand and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pure, incandescent rage. But also fear. Real fear. Because this wasn't about territory or money or power. This was about a little girl who called him Daddy and a woman who'd given him a reason to be human. He called a meeting with the Rossi family. What do you want? He asked flatly, facing 3 men in an abandoned warehouse, the cliché location, but some traditions existed for a reason. Marco Rossi, a man with silver hair and dead eyes, smiled. The East Side. Walk away, and the girl and her mother stay off limits. And if I don't, then we take what we're owed. One way or another. Vincent looked at these men. Men like him, men who'd chosen power over humanity, and realized something profound. He didn't want to be them anymore. You can have East Side, he said quietly. Marco blinked, surprised. Just like that. Just like that. But you leave them alone. Forever. We put it in writing, witnessed by the commission. If anything happens to Emma or Sophia, anything, even an accident, all 5 families come for you. Agreed. Marco studied him, then slowly nodded. Agreed. The wolf has gone soft. No, Vincent said. He's finally gotten his priorities straight. Emma found out what he'd done. You gave up territory for us? She asked, sitting across from him in her small living room. Sophia was asleep in her bedroom. Vincent, that's part of your empire. It's buildings and money, he said simply. She's my daughter. He paused, searching for words. You're the only real thing I've ever had. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You can't just fix everything by sacrificing. I'm not trying to fix everything. I'm trying to do one thing right. He reached across the space between them, not touching but close. For 5 years, I told myself I'd saved you by leaving. But I didn't save you. I just hurt you and ran away. I can't undo that. But I can make sure that from now on, every choice I make puts her first. Puts you first. What does that mean? Emma whispered. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm getting out. Her breath caught. Out of. All of it. the business, the empire. I'm selling my operations to the Luciano family, taking a payout and walking away. It'll take 6 months to transfer everything safely. But after that, he finally met her eyes. After that, I'm just Vincent. No wolf, no empire, just a man trying to be a good father. If you'll let me. Emma stared at him. You'd give up everything? I already did, he said softly. The moment I saw her, I just needed time to realize it. The 6 months that followed were the hardest and best of Vincent's life. He dismantled an empire piece by piece, carefully ensuring his exit wouldn't start a war or leave a power vacuum. He set up trusts, paid off debts, and severed ties with a world he'd been born into but no longer wanted. And in between meetings with lawyers and crime bosses, he showed up. He took Sophia to her first day of kindergarten, holding her hand as she nervously walked into the classroom. He learned to braid hair, badly, but Sophia wore it proudly. He attended a school play where she was flower number 3 and cheered like she'd won an Oscar.